contained the spread of the pandemic. So given, and many of these countries are countries that are around Singapore, so these are neighboring countries, we have to be very careful and cautious with regards to opening our border. And if that is going to be the case, then the outlook for tourism as well as aviation sectors will definitely be, a lot more challenging.
Both analysts add that any recovery is likely to stay uneven across the various industries.
A newly released residential land parcel in eastern Singapore is expected to see strong interest from developers. The site at Jalan Tembusu is one of two sites released under the reserve list. The other is at Tampines Street 62. More than 1,300 homes can be built on the two leasehold sites. The Jalan Tembusu plot is near schools and the future Marine Parade MRT station. About 600 private homes are expected to be built there. The site has a maximum gross floor area of about 54,800 square meters. The Tampines site is slated for an executive condominium with about 700 units. One analyst says developers will likely not rush to trigger the Tampines site as a neighboring executive condo land parcel has yet to be sold.
I think the site that probably would draw with more interest will be the one at Jalan Tembusu. Part of the reason is because there has not been any major government land sale in the District 15 area for quite a few years, and especially not one that is of this size.
Singtel is eyeing a new strategy to help turn the tide on shrinking profits. A telco has posted an annual net profit of $554 million. That's a 49% on-year drop. Brennan Tanoto with more.
The pandemic weighed heavily on Singtel's latest earnings, but it's also presenting new opportunities.
We also have some tailwinds, which is really about the pace of digitalization and the acceleration and adoption of digital services and solutions by both consumers as well as enterprises.
Singtel will be focusing on areas like 5G and developing new growth in infocom technology and digital services. It also has new plans for its infrastructure assets.
Things like towers in Australia, data centers in Singapore, submarine cables, fiber assets are all fueling the digital economy. And some of these assets will not just be looking at divesting it, but also looking at turning them into new growth engines. For example, in partnering different solution provider to scale this business a lot faster. To actually expand beyond the shores of Singapore as well into the regional markets.
In fact, Singtel's already begun the process of auctioning its stake in some assets from Optus, its Australian subsidiary.
But it is not just about purely selling it. Within that divestment, you also see that we are also committing to building new towers in that asset.
Observers say the telco's latest strategy is a step in the right direction. They say Singapore's telecom sector continues to be pressured by challenges like travel restrictions.
Roaming revenue will not come back. Those prepaid revenues from foreign workers and tourism and tourists, right? They won't be coming back. It's all about in this environment, cut your costs, and ultimately, when things start to open up, revenue starts to ramp up, right? At that point, if you have growing revenue and you have cut your costs, that combination will actually culminate in earnings growth.
Despite the weaker earnings, Singtel has proposed a final dividend per share of 2.4 Singapore cents. This brings its total dividend per share to 7.5 Singapore cents.
A social media storm is brewing in India. Twitter says it is worried about the safety of its staff, claiming police have been using intimidation tactics. A Delhi police visited Twitter's office after a tweet by Narendra Modi's ruling party was labelled as manipulated media. An opposition party had complained the post contained fake news about the government's handling of the pandemic. Neha Punya explains why Twitter is joining a growing list of social media giants concerned about operating in India.
Now, India is a massive market for any tech firm because it's home to millions of internet users, and those numbers are swelling with every year because of cheap phones and cheaper data plans. But as lucrative as this market is, social media firms now realizing access to this market comes with having to deal with a government that's increasingly tightening its control over social media. In the past, the government has had similar run-ins with WhatsApp as well as Facebook, but this time around, Twitter, earning the government's ire for a manipulated media tag over a ruling party leader's tweet that it's refused to take down. In the last 1 year, we've seen similar confrontations between Twitter as well as the government when the Modi government asked the platform to take down several tweets about the farmers' protest as well as tweets criticizing the government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, Twitter complied on some instances but didn't on the others, because increasingly how social media companies deal with these requests is putting the spotlight on issues of freedom of expression. This time around, Twitter categorically taking a very strident position, saying it's worried about the shrinking space for freedom of expression in India, and it's worried about the safety of its employees here in the country, because in the past the government has written to firms like WhatsApp, Facebook and Twitter, warning them that whenever there is non-compliance with a request that seeks the removal of any objectionable material on their platforms, their local employees can face arrest.
And that's a business update for now. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Liz. Global temperatures are said to be getting closer to a climate tipping point. The UN says that the world may heat up by 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels in the next 5 years. And that's seen by scientists as the threshold to avoid the most catastrophic effects of climate change. UN experts believe that there is a 40% chance of that happening from this year up to the year 2025. Now, that's up from the previous prediction of 20%. And that would push global temperatures temporarily past the limit that was set by the Paris Climate Accord, which is measured over a 30-year period. Last year was already one of the warmest on record, hitting 1.2 degrees above the pre-industrial baseline, and it's expected to get warmer each year until 2025. And all regions will be affected. We asked an expert what this report by the UN says about the world's progress in tackling the climate crisis.
To put it bluntly, we're failing. We're failing globally. Most countries are failing nationally. The pledges that countries have made to Paris, some of them are more ambitious than others, but collectively we know that even if they're all met on time 100%, the world will still head for 2.7 to 3 degrees. Now, since the Paris Agreement, things have been accelerating even more. We're pumping more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Warming is still accelerating. This latest UN report shows some very, very frightening predictions. So nobody is doing well enough.
Still to come, younger people in Malaysia are testing positive for COVID-19 as the country reports another new daily record. And how discarded frog skin and fish scales can repair the human body.